Who is Vladimir Putin? How does a man from a humble Soviet background become one of the most powerful people in all of Europe? From picking up the pieces of a recently dissolved Soviet Union, Vladimir Putin has been in power for 22 years now, shaping and focusing on Russia's strengths and weaknesses for 2 decades in office. Today, however, we ask, who is the man behind the presidency? And how did we get here? Welcome to Neapolitan. Today we're going to be taking a look at Russian President Vladimir Putin. A newcomer to the political landscape, Putin became president quickly through clever positioning and use of his knowledge and training as a member of the former KGB. We're going to take a dive into where he's from, how he got here, and look at the man he is today. We'll be looking at it broken down into 3 unique sections: Neapolitan Ice Cream, the vanilla, the who, what, where, and one of the folks that changed the world, chocolate, that flavor punch. Controversy and adversity make lives so interesting. And the strawberry, the lasting legacy and lick that all Neapolitan lives come with. If you're interested in other videos like this, or different in-depth looks at essential people throughout history, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on, so you never miss a single one. Without further ado, let's get into it. Vanilla. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, Soviet Union. His mother, Maria Ivanovna Putina, was a factory worker, while his father, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, was a conscript to the Soviet Navy and served in the early 1930s on a submarine fleet. His father served in the Destruction Battalion early in World War II, but was later transferred to the regular army and wounded in 1942. He had 2 brothers, Albert, who died in infancy, and Victor, who died of diphtheria and starvation during the siege of Leningrad by Nazi Germany's forces. Putin started at school number 193 at Baskov Lane, near his home as a child. He was just a few in his small class of 45 who were not yet members of the Young Pioneer organization. This was a mass youth organization for children and adolescents between 9 to 15 in the Soviet Union that allowed children to learn social cooperation skills. At 12, a young Vladimir began practicing sambo and judo. In his free time, he was known to enjoy the works of Karl Marx, Lenin, and Friedrich Engels. He studied German at St. Petersburg High School 281 and speaks German fluently as a second language. He later studied law at the Leningrad State University and graduated in 1975. His thesis was written on the most favored nation trading principle in international law. To study there, he was first required to join the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He remained a member until it was outlawed and ceased to exist in 1991. Putin met Anatoly Sobchak, a business law professor, and would later become the co-author of the Russian Constitution. Putin and Sobchak would be mutually influenced to each other's careers in St. Petersburg and Moscow. In 1975, Putin joined the KGB, training in Leningrad. After training, he worked in counterintelligence before transferring to the First Chief Directorate. There, he monitored foreigners and consular officials in Leningrad. Putin was later sent to Moscow for further training in 1984. Between 1985 and 1990, Putin served in Dresden, East Germany, under a cover identity as a translator. He was reduced, along with his colleagues, mainly to collecting press clippings and contributing to the mountains of useless information that the KGB produced. His work was downplayed by former Stasi spy chief Markus Wolf and Putin's former KGB colleague, Vladimir Usoltsev. His downplaying was later revealed as a cover for Putin's KGB involvement and his support of the terrorist Red Army faction, who frequently hid within East Germany. During the fall of Berlin, Putin began to save the Soviet Cultural Center and official KGB Villa files for the official authorities of would-be United Germany. This ensured that demonstrators, including KGB and Stasi agents, would not obtain or destroy them themselves. Then, he supposedly only burnt the KGB files, saving the archives in the Soviet Cultural Center for authorities. Nothing is known about the selection criteria during this burning, especially concerning the Stasi files or those of other agencies. He explained that many documents were left in Germany simply because the furnace burst, but many KGB Villa documents were sent to Moscow. Following the collapse of the government of Communist East Germany, Putin had to resign from active KGB service. Suspicions had begun to arise about his loyalty during demonstrations, despite the KGB and Soviet army still operating in East Germany. He returned to Leningrad in early 1990, a part of the active reserves. This is where Vladimir worked for about 3 months in international affairs. Putin spent the entire time looking for new KGB recruits, monitored the student body, and renewed his friendship with his former professor, Anatoly Sobchak, who would soon be the mayor of Leningrad. In the Soviet coup d'etat attempt against the president, Mikhail Gorbachev, Putin claims he resigned on the second day with the rank of lieutenant colonel, citing that he understood what side he was on when the coup began. His political career began in May 1990, when he was appointed as an advisor on the international affairs to the mayor of Leningrad. At this time, according to 2018 statements, Putin may have worked as a private taxi driver or similar jobs to earn extra money. On June 28, 1991, Putin became the head of the Committee for External Relations of the mayor's office, responsible now for promoting international relations and registering business ventures. In just a year, Putin was investigated by the Legislative Council, led by Marina Sale. He had been discovered to have understated prices and permitted the export of $93 million in metals that were to be traded for foreign food aid that never arrived. Despite the recommendation that Putin be fired, he remained the head of the Committee for External Relations until 1996. Between 1994 and 1996, he also held other political and governmental positions in St. Petersburg. Putin's Moscow career began with Sobchak's loss for re-election in June of 1996. Putin resigned from his position in the city's administration and moved to Moscow. He was then appointed deputy chief of the Presidential Property Management Department, headed by Pavel Borodin. He was in the position until March 1997, responsible for the state's foreign property and organizing the transfer of the Soviet Union's former assets. In 1997, he was appointed the deputy chief of presidential staff by Boris Yeltsin, remaining there until 1998, when he was appointed first deputy chief of the presidential staff. This upward trajectory continued as he was appointed director of the Federal Security Service, the primary intelligence and security organization, and the successor of the former KGB. In August of 1999, Putin was then appointed one of the 3 first deputy prime ministers and later promoted as acting prime minister on the same day by President Yeltsin. Yeltsin announced that he wanted to see Putin as his successor, and Putin agreed to run for the presidency. In fewer than 18 months, Putin was voted the 5th prime minister of Russia, with a vote of 233. Few expected Putin, virtually unknown to the public, to last longer than his predecessors. On December 31, 1999, Yeltsin suddenly and unexpectedly resigned from the presidency, which led to Putin becoming acting president of the Russian Federation. His first presidential decree guaranteed that any corruption charges against the outgoing president and his relatives would not be pursued, notably targeting the Mabetex bribery case that involved Yeltsin's family members. A criminal investigation against Putin himself, as a member of the St. Petersburg city government, was dropped. In the March 26, 2000 elections, Putin won over Yeltsin's opponents by 53%, becoming the next Russian president by the result of a May inauguration. Between 2000 and 2004, Putin was set on the reconstruction of the impoverished condition of the country, winning a power struggle with Russian oligarchs through a grand bargain. This allowed the oligarchs to retain most of their power in exchange for illicit support of and alignment with Putin's new government. He was voted back in with 71% of the electorate in 2004 for a second term. This was a massive time of upheaval in Russia, as the collapse of the Soviet Union had been one of significant change. The country's cradle-to-grave social safety net was suddenly gone, and life expectancy unexpectedly declined. In 2005, this was the basis for national priority projects being launched to improve Russia's education, housing, healthcare, and agriculture. Chocolate. Putin was challenged multiple times for his popularity. The first time was in August of 2000, when he was criticized for the alleged mishandling of the Kursk submarine disaster, mainly because it took several days for him to return from vacation and even more before he would visit the scene. However, in 2002, the Moscow theater hostage crisis occurred, where the death of 130 hostages in the rescue operation was thought to potentially harm the president's approval. However, he enjoyed record approval ratings of 83%, as many believe this was a satisfactory handling of the siege. In 2003 in Chechnya, a referendum was held, adopting a new constitution that declared the Republic part of Russia. This declaration has been a consistent struggle between the rebel movements, with sporadic attacks throughout the Northern Caucasus. This led to other issues down the line. The shooting of Anna Politkovskaya, a journalist who exposed Russian army corruption and their conduct in Chechnya, triggered international criticism. Accusations flew that Putin failed to protect the country's new independent media, though Putin would later claim this shooting caused more harm than her investigations did. In 2008, Putin was barred from a third consecutive term, per the Constitution. In power-switching operation on May 8, 2008, just the day after handing over the presidency to first Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, Putin was appointed Prime Minister of Russia and maintained his political dominance. It was revealed in 2011 that the men had cut a deal to allow Putin to run for president in 2012, years prior. Many in the media coined this move as Rekharovka, which is the Russian term for the chess move, castling. Widespread accusations were cast in the 2012 election as Putin won the election with a 63.6% margin. Anti-Putin protests would take place both during and directly after the campaign. The most notorious was the Pussy Riot performance on February 21st and the subsequent trial. An estimated 8,000 to 20,000 protesters gathered in Moscow on May 6th, and 80 people were injured while over 570 were arrested in the following days. A counter-protest occurred with over 130,000 in attendance. Later, some stated they were either paid to come, forced to by their employers, or misled to believe it was supposed to be a folk festival instead. Despite the upset, Putin's presidency was inaugurated in the Kremlin on May 7, 2012. On his first day, he issued 14 decrees, outlining concerns for the economy, education, housing, skilled labor training, EU relations, interethnic relations, and more. Between 2012 and 2013, Putin cracked down with anti-LGBTQ laws, backing stricter legislation against them. This prohibited the use of symbols seen as homosexual propaganda, like the rainbow flag, and published works containing homosexual content. This sparked international criticism, as Putin fell back on the technicalities of the law, saying it was a ban on the propaganda of homosexuality, but denied there was any discrimination against homosexuals in Russia in any professional or social manner. In January 2017, U.S. intelligence communities assessed that Putin ordered an influence campaign to harm and denigrate Hillary Clinton's chances for the presidency, then developing a clear preference for Donald Trump. Putin later stated it was theoretically possible, but could instead be perpetrated by patriotically minded Russian hackers or others with Russian citizenship. The CIA has reportedly nurtured a source within the Russian government that was able to pass crucial information on Putin's direct involvement and attempts in the 2020 presidential election. Strawberry. 2014 marked the beginning of struggles between Russia and Ukraine, as Russia began making military incursions into Ukrainian territory. Russia annexed Crimea and Sevastopol after a referendum in which, according to official results, Crimeans voted to join the Russian Federation. According to academics, many members of the international community assumed this annexation of Crimea initiated a new kind of Russian foreign policy. He stated that this shows a shift from a state-driven approach to that of an offensive stance, looking to recreate the Soviet Union. While the act to annex Crimea was bold and drastic, by many accounts, this new foreign policy may have many similarities to older approaches. In September of 2021, Ukraine had conducted military exercises with NATO forces. The Kremlin quickly warned that NATO expanding military infrastructure in Ukraine would cross red lines for Putin. However, one spokesman denied allegations that Russia was preparing for a possible invasion of the country. Putin would then ask Joe Biden for legal guarantees that NATO would not expand eastward. The US and NATO would reject these demands. In the pro-Western Revolution of Dignity that took place in Ukraine in 2014, Putin seized eastern regions of the nation. Despite repeated denials that Putin and the Kremlin had plans to invade Ukraine as of 2021 and early 2022, including assurances that these fears were alarmist, this would quickly prove false. In February of 2022, he launched a war meant to gain control of the rest of the country and overthrow the elected government on the pretext it was being run by Nazis. The invasion of Ukraine quickly led to worldwide condemnation of Putin. as well as the massive current sanctions on the Russian Federation. This included clear statements of condemnation by world leaders across the globe. U.S. President Joe Biden called the invasion unprovoked and unjustified, while the EU denounced it and promised to hold the Kremlin accountable. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, issued a condemnation calling the actions unprovoked and a violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said that Canada calls on Russia to immediately cease all hostile and provocative actions and withdraw all military and proxy forces from the country. He promised Canada would take additional actions to stop the aggression and continue to stand with Ukraine, its people, as well as the Ukrainian-Canadian community. Numerous calls have been made for the president of Russia as a war criminal. On February 24th, Putin launched a televised address calling the attack on Ukraine a special military operation meant to protect the people in predominantly Russian-speaking regions like Donbass, who had reportedly been facing humiliation and genocide by the Kyiv regime. It continues to affect the lives of both Russians and Ukrainians. Many Russian soldiers were unaware of the coming warfare, and civilians are struggling under the sanctions, though the Ukrainian cities are being bombarded with heavy Russian casualties. In the thick of the aggressive actions and attacks against Ukraine, and aggressive statements by the West, Putin has put the Strategic Rocket Force's nuclear deterrence units on high alert. Many believe that Putin may have thought he would be met in Ukraine with flowers and smiles, as officials call into question that Putin is surrounded by officials who have misinformed him about the military performance and the effect of sanctions on Russia as a whole. Intelligence agencies claim Putin is growing increasingly erratic and frustrated due to slow progress in the face of surprisingly strong defense by Ukraine. As the situation continues to unfold, we'll have to see where these sanctions and continued frustration take the Russian president forward for now. If you like this video and want to see more like it, then make sure to leave a like so we know what you think and can continue to bring you the kind of videos you want to see. Let us know if you think there was anything we missed or if you'd like to see someone in particular in the future. We love to hear your thoughts on the material we've shown or other videos like this. However, we urge commenters to stay civil down below with this ongoing situation. Check out the other videos on this channel for fascinating looks into historical figures just like this. Until next time, this has been Neapolitan, and we'll see you around.